Good day and welcome to this Waterloo Smarter Health Seminar. I'm Shirley Fenton, Managing Director of the Waterloo Institute for Health Informatics Research. And I thank you for joining us today for our fourth seminar in this series entitled The Many Facets and Faces in Health Informatics. I'd also like to welcome our web viewers and Ontario Telehealth Network sites. This seminar is being recorded and is being broadcast over the web. We ask that you hold your questions to the end of the presentation so that we can get a real or virtual mic to you. A very warm welcome to our guest speaker, Dr. David Koff. David is the Chief of the Department of Diagnostic Imaging, Hamilton Health Sciences, and Associate Professor and Chair, Department of Radiology in the Faculty of Health Sciences at McMaster University. Dominic will introduce David in a minute. I'd like to acknowledge our seminar series sponsors. They are Borden Ladner Gervais, McKesson, and Healthcare Information Management and Communications Canada. Without these hosts, we could not give these seminars without their support, and we're very grateful to them. Before we begin, I'd like to announce our next seminar in this series. It will be on Wednesday, May 27th, and our guest speakers are Tom Baer and Michelle Corrine from the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center. They'll be speaking on geographic information systems for community health. I think you would find this particular seminar very interesting, so I hope you'll all come back. There is a flyer about the seminar at the back on the table of this room. As well, I'd like to just remind those that may be new to this series that we are also holding our next Health Informatics Boot Camp at the University of Waterloo on June 18th to the 20th. For those of you that are not familiar with the boot camp, it gives a broad introduction to the world of health informatics. We'd like to see this room full. This is where it will be held. So I invite you to register if you're interested in attending. And the boot camp flyer is also at the back of this room. This seminar series is looking at the many different facets of health informatics and some of the key people involved in these areas. We've had people talk about personalized medicine, as a critical support to clinical research, and future seminars are going to be looking at, as I said, geographic information systems in healthcare. Our agenda today is as follows. Dominic Covey, Founding Director of the Waterloo Institute for Health Informatics Research, will introduce our speaker. David Koff will then speak for 45 to 50 minutes, and then we'd like to have you all join in a facilitated discussion. So please hold your questions to after David's presentation. Signal to either Dominic or myself that you'd like to ask a question, and we'll get a microphone to you. And just remember to position the microphone as close as you can to your mouth so that we can everyone can hear you speak, and we can actually record that on the video recording as well. So we'd welcome questions from each of you and from those of you that are coming in virtually as well. So now may I introduce to you Dominic Covey, who will introduce our speaker.
I was trying to figure out today how long I've known David, and it seems like a lot longer than it was. I think the first time we spoke was around the time that you did your first talk in a boot camp, but I think it was a bit before that. David was at Sunnybrook Hospital at the time and was very interested and involved in image compression. In fact, he had a project with the Canadian Association of Radiologists and has been supported by Infoway to define a standard for compression for different types of images, which actually I'm looking forward to hearing some of the current work about that right now. This has been a challenging area because if you compress an image and reduce the amount of data that you can then visualize, you could lose diagnostic information. So it's a critical step. It could mean a radiograph that was less than adequate. I realized that David was actually in industry for a while. He ran a company when he first came to Canada. He did have a clinical fellowship at the University Health Network. He joined the Montreal Heart Institute and Sunnybrook Health Science Center, where he was most recently before he came to McMaster. His involvement in medical imaging is over a long time. Medical image transmission through the internet, and his company was named EasyPax, a Canadian private corporation. He specialized in teleradiology and medical imaging and has worked extensively on image compression. He is also a co-founder and chair of IHE, that's the Integrated Health Enterprise Standards Organization in Canada. David has many, many interests. Now that he's moved into McMaster, we've had a number of meetings with him, a big one today, and one about 2 months ago, building a deep relationship and a medical imaging institute together with McMaster. So this is graduating into something quite substantial. There are about 15 people at the meeting today, and many projects were defined in that meeting where people here are interested in doing specific research and then working with David and with the radiologists and other people at McMaster University. So with David comes a connection to the hospital diagnostic imaging area that has been a major problem for us, a major challenge for us in carrying forward some of the imaging research. So we have great hope about this and a tremendous desire to move forward. David also has taught quite a bit. I mentioned he taught in our first boot camp here at the University of Waterloo. He teaches a course each year in medical imaging in Toronto. I guess that'll move to McMaster now. I attended that course 1 year. He has quite a few people who come in from all aspects of diagnostic imaging industry, diagnostic imaging specialists. The talks were unbelievable. The topics were current. So he's a person that's kept up with the field and is frequently involved in both projects and conferences. So, David, not only welcome to this talk, but welcome to a deeper and deeper relationship with the University of Waterloo.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dominique. Thank you, Shirley. And thank you very much for inviting me this afternoon. I'm really happy to be here. I must say that I feel a strong relationship with Waterloo. I started very early when I started in this country to have a joint research project here, and I've been very happy, and I really wish that we'll be able to build a very strong relationship between McMaster and Waterloo around at least our medical imaging field. So thank you again. What I will talk about today is a big problem. It's really something that is weighing heavily on our lives as radiologists. You know that we have to deal with more and more and more data, and that's something which at some point can be slowing us down as the load some days is just unbearable. And we may have to find pretty soon a way to cope with all those data. If you just think about that, and I got this image, it comes from UC Berkeley, and I think ACFA who allowed me to use that a little while ago. And but if you just think about it, this is all, because this dates already, 3 years, so it's, we look at 2003, so that's pretty old. But in 2003, we already said in the last 4 years, we had more data generated than the previous 40,000 years. So just think we're now 5 years later. I don't think this room is high enough to, we must be going through the ceiling, I'm pretty sure. And you see that radiology is only here. So that's a small component. But cardiology and pathology are even generating more images than we do. So you just think of the huge volume and how heavy this will be. And thanks to our vendors, we're coming with more and more sophisticated devices. This is the last 320 slices that Toshiba has released a few months ago. So what does it mean? When we started, this thing is a CT scan. You have the gantry here, and here you have a tube which is just turning around this gantry. And at the beginning, we had this tube was making one rotation, generating one slice. It was fine. It took about a few minutes to reconstruct this slice, and we could view it. So when I started in this business about, I won't tell you how many years ago, but that would be nice. But we were doing a CT head with about 8 slices, 10 slices, up to 12 slices, a full abdomen with 16 slices. And that took about 30 minutes, 45 minutes to do that. And then recently we started to move faster and faster and faster. We saw new devices able to generate 4 slices in only 1 rotation, and then 16 slices in 1 rotation, and then 64 slices. And now you see that we're at 320 slices in only 1 rotation of the gantry, which means that we can cover 16 centimeter in less than 1 second, which means that you do almost a full acquisition in 1 second. That's less time than what it takes to get the patient on the table and put the IV. So see how many patients we can see in 1 day if we spend 1 second per patient. That's horrible. And that's what happened. As I said, 1994, an average radiologist reading CT may have to see 1,500 images a day. Then in 2002, it was 16,000 images a day if you include the previous exam. So that means that we got at about 2 seconds per image. In 2006, we're at 80,000 CT images a day. And today, if we look at the volume, and if we think that an average of 800 images per study, you see 40 studies a day, 3 windows, which mean bone, lung, mediastinum, for instance, and different planes. And you compare with the previous study, you may be at almost 600,000 images a day, which means that you have to see 6.6 images per second. Do you think we can do it? There's no way. And then you work 24 hours. So this was for CT, but then we have MR, new functional images, 4D imaging, a lot of things, just getting almost impossible. It's nice. And we couldn't work without that anymore. If you look at the well, that should work, but anyway, if we couldn't be able to generate a P study, for instance, if we didn't have those tools. We need to see our images in real time. You cover the aorta, for instance, for trauma in 1 acquisition. You can get your full volume. You can see your spine. And always had problem with this stuff, and it doesn't seem to get. No, I'm not the only one, I guess. It doesn't seem to get better. Anyway, you have to trust me. It's getting horrible. You see your aorta here. You see the bottom of the aorta. It's very easy. And for trauma, for instance, you want to assess complex fractures. It becomes so much easier. And you see a bone here is ruptured. So it's true that it's a lot of images, but it's getting much, much, much faster for us to go through the whole volume. If you look at what has happened over the last years, you see this is all the curves of the evolution that what we had at Sunnybrook, the evolution of all the images generated in our department, and we were at about 300,000 studies a year, something in this range, maybe a little less in 2006. So there was this regular increase of the images generated, going from an average of 35 images per study to 89 images per study. But this is for all the modalities together. Now, if we look just at the CT, it's getting even worse. As you see how it started in 99 and where we are today. So if you look at some numbers, just realize that we were for an average of 17,000 exams in 99. We went up to 41,000 studies, but the amount of images grew from a million around 2 million to almost 1,400,000. So we went from an average of 105 images to 330 images per study, and it's getting just worse. Why? Well, we have all those nice gadgets that we got from our vendors, all those complex reconstruction, MIP, multi-planar reconstruction, volume rendering, virtual reality, functional imaging. So a lot of stuff that increased the volume. Will it work? I have no idea. No, it doesn't work. So you really have to trust me. Yeah. And there is a button, help here, but I could use it, but I won't, because I don't even know what will happen. So when you look at what has been added over time, this was basically when we moved from the solution where this was on the server and what we are bringing to the workstation. And we see that we're bringing more and more and more and more functionalities. So these are all the things that we're able to do now compared to what we started with in the early days, where we had just the basic 3D, the MPR. Now we have tons of function that we can add on that. I guess this won't work either. Oh, it does. So wonderful. This is a CT coronography. For people who are familiar with video games, I think they will feel comfortable with that, and that's really what we need, people with this type of experience. It makes better radiologists, and this should be included in our training. But you think, when you look at that, you have about 2,000 images to be able to do that, where you have to take acquisitions, supine, prone, and then you have to reconstruct those images and create the AVI. So altogether, you get to about 2 gig of data. Yeah, that should work, but it. Yeah. No, the hand is not coming, and I don't know why. So there must be something pretty. Sometimes. Cardiac CT is even worse. Then you're looking at very thin slices. You do your full reconstruction. You have multiple sequences, multiple planes. You can look at your coronary arteries, average of 5,000 images per study, and all those images at 512K. You get up to 2.5 gigabytes just for one study. Yeah, forget it. I'll show you after that. So the point today is, and still today, we have, when we want to view all these images, we have to go to a workstation, dedicated workstation, do our reconstruction, spend time on this workstation, and then push to our archive, to the PACS, the relevant images, what we have selected, but we are not able to store the whole exam. So also, that's something which at some point may be good for radiologists, because we have the workstation in our departments, we have control on those workstations, and we are providing the reads, but that may not last. So as I said, tons of images, growing. What to do with all that? And we sometimes, as I said, not only we think that we cannot move, but some days, and I must say, yes, I felt we really have the feeling that we won't be able to cope with that. So to help us, we had all those complex reconstructions and software. So as I said, this also has to change, because when we started, I mentioned the dedicated workstation, which is close to the modality, where the radiologist has to go and sit on the workstation, do his reconstruction, spend time, send them back to the PAC, and do his report. As it takes a lot of time, tedious, what we try to do is to get the technologists to do it, but there is a shortage of radiology, there is a shortage of technology, they don't have time to do it, and they are not especially excited to spend their time doing that. So what happened, we saw in the States, we saw appearing some specialized labs where you take your old batch of images, you send them to the lab, they will do the reconstruction for you, and they will send you back all those 3D, and usually takes up to 24 hours, and then it's pretty convenient for people who don't have the resources to do it, but that's not a solution, because you don't have your result in real time, and there is a cost to that. So now when we want to deal with those complex images that where more and more are implementing client-server solution where you have a thin client on your workstation which is linked to the PACS, and then you can do your reconstruction on your own, and you don't have to rely anymore on outside and on the technologies. You don't waste your time anymore. So that has been very helpful. And we use those reconstructions more and more for everything, as I mentioned. So the way it works, you will take your images on your CT. They are stored on a separate server. You access the server directly from your PACS with a special interface. You see you have a little button here, and you just click this button and you are on your 3D tool, and you can do your reconstruction. If you don't have your images already on the server, you can do a simple DACOM query using the standard, and you fetch your image on the database. You have a number of companies who are now moving into that. And it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy. That's how it looks like. So you have your interface here. You get your images, and then you find the function you're interested in. For instance, if you want to do, well, here it's a little bit of a runoff to see your vessels, you can call the function, and you do your own reconstruction. I'd say it's pretty easy, because the first day I've been able to do that, and I was very proud, because I said, even if I'm able to do that, that must not be too complicated. This is the aorta. These are the femoral arteries, and you see that there's an aneurysm here. And if this thing was working, I would even be able to turn around the aneurysm, but fortunately, I think I still have this problem.
I'm not sure that it's connected.
To no, it is, because it worked, but I don't know what. I tried it. Oh, here you go. Oh, I won't tell you. I just did escape, which was pretty simple. So you see, you can turn around your aneurysm very easy. But the point is, okay, I can do it. I'm happy. I have my images. But what do I do with all the raw images? Because I still have to deal with my 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 images. Can I store all these images? It's huge. Usually we keep them on the dedicated server for reconstruction for a few weeks, few months, up to 3 months. Sometimes some vendors say they can store them for 12 months. But it's still too much to send them to the PACS. So some people have just get the thick slices on the PACS and discard the thin slices, and so we can still go through the volume later on if we want to do it. Storage seems to be, I was at Costco last Sunday, and I saw that you can get now 2 terabytes for $500. So you would tell me why I would still bothered with this storage thing, but it looks pretty simple, but we still have to get some pretty reliable storage devices. So what do we do to keep all those images? We have different ways to do that, and I won't go into that because I'm not too good on the technical side, but you can use any type of storage. We are now slowly moving away from tape library. We are more interested in using spinning disks, but tape library is still very, very much implemented in many places. The SAN is also one of the great solutions. So if you look at the kind of standard architecture for PACS, and that's the one we had at Sunnybrook, you have all those display stations where you view your images. You have an online storage here, your server, and then when you are done, so this acts like your cache, where you keep your current images and the previous that you call from the PACS, but then you send them to the long-term storage where you have a spinning disk, and then the tapes that you would call, and that works, and that works pretty well. The thing is that you need to create some redundancy if you want to be safe. So you will have your main site with this kind of thing, and then you have your remote site where you replicate all your data. And then from there, you have to distribute all those information. So you cannot just keep them on site, but you have to address the needs of the radiology, send your images to the referring physicians. And we'll go into that. And to go for something which is even more ambitious, and I don't know how many of you are aware of what the government is doing through Canada Health Infoway, but there is a big project called Diagnostic Imaging Systems through Canada Infoway. The goal is to create digital imaging repositories all across the country. So the idea is that to replicate all the images generated in all the hospitals and private clinics and store them on a very long-term archive where we would keep those images for the patient life. So now we're not talking anymore of 5 years, 7 years, but it may be 50 years, 60 years. So if you think that we're generating something like 41, this year I think we should be at 43 million studies per year in Canada. Just try to think how many studies we need to keep on those archives. So it's a huge amount. The idea in doing that is to make those images available to the referring physician through the electronic health record. That means that each physician should be able to have access to those images wherever he is. If you are on the West Coast and you move to the East Coast, you would just have to query the repository and you will have access to your data. They are doing the same thing not only for imaging, but as I said, lab result, drug, which means to know what are your treatments, what you're taking, or your medication, and all that is based on the use of standards. So Infoway was very optimistic. They said, well, we have those DR repositories installed in each and every province. It's big storage units, able to hold up to 1.5 million studies per year. And they seem to be able to justify that by the cost, which would be less expensive than implementing PACS everywhere. That could help to replace PACS for small hospitals who would be completely hooked to those DR repositories. Where are we today? We started from 25 DR repositories, but it seemed that there was some limitation in the budget, so now we're in 22, and I just heard last week that Infoway was to scale down to 21. Some provinces have done very well because we have already those things working in the Maritimes, 2 working in BC. Alberta is also doing pretty well as they have a province-wide integrated pack, so it would be very easy for them to move to the DIR. Ontario, as usual, is a little more complicated because people have seem to have kind of trouble to find agreements on the use of those things. So we're a little late, but hopefully it will come. So now you tell me why bother about compression. I will tell you that I just told you that we have those terabytes for $500. So why? Well, even if we have these repositories, we can just take those images, shrink them. It's easy. It's true, but it seemed that interestingly, the two things are moving together. The cost of storage is dropping, the number of images is increasing, and we're still exactly at the same level because we, in terms of cost, you know, when you think that maybe the storage is 10 times less expensive than 5 years ago, we're generating 10 times more images. So what, you know, what did we get from that? Nothing. So we still need to find a way to store those images on the long term. Also, the cost of operation, because you go to Costco, you buy your stuff, it's fine, you're happy, you bring it home. But who will operate this thing? You, but not for a big hospital. So you still need to have people to operate that, and that's time. Because if you have big images, it takes time to move them. You have to think about your data migration, because over time you have to move them every 3-4 years on new support, because otherwise it may be obsolete, so you'll be in trouble. And we're talking of 7 years retention, but now we talk of lifelong retention, so that's a lot. And other problem is bandwidth. we have good bandwidth in hospital, that's fine. But if you want to send your images to remote physicians somewhere, do you think they would be able to get them? First of all, they have to get computers. But then, assuming that they get computer in their offices, they will still be limited by bandwidth, which won't be faster than what you have at home. So if you want to move 5,000 images, that would be slow. And there are even some projects through Infoway where they want to create some kind of load balancing for images, where they want to be able to share the load between radiologists. Which brings us to justify the use of compression, so that may be the only way. But now you want to talk about compression to radiologists, and that's where we get somewhere where it doesn't work anymore. If you tell them, well, we want to use compression, they really have the feeling that you're taking that and doing this. And they start being a little concerned because they say, well, we are losing our data, we lose everything, we don't want it, we're scared. No way, doesn't work. And to try to solve this issue, we looked first at the official statement, so who said what about compression. And everybody said, well, that's fine, you want to use compression, good for you, not a problem. Be careful, that's all. So you have to do it under the direction of a qualified physician, but you can do it, not a problem. If you look at what DICOM said, the standard DICOM position is very simple. They say, we don't care. Do whatever you want. We never say yes. We never say no. You want to do it? That's fine. That's your problem. They just adopted among the whole world of compression a few standards that they think would be more appropriate, and among them JPEG 2000. FDA couldn't care less. They say, okay, compress, fine. The only thing, if you use something which is not even a standard, you just have to tell us what, and you have to make us make the code available if we need it. So we may have to have a look at it. What do the lawyers said? Can we do it? And will there be a loss of critical information? Maybe. We don't know. What will happen? So where we went with that is that with Canada Health Infoway, we really need to address this issue of storing all those images. They asked us at Storybook, or they issued an RFP, and we won the RFP, which is different, but that's good anyway, to do a study on this compression issue and try to do an evaluation. Before doing the study, they did an extensive review of literature. So we had 2 reviews done, which looked at all the papers published on this topic. And we had also 2 legal reviews on that. The literature review showed that it was fine, and here I'm talking about lossy compression, that it was fine to use lossy compression. We could do it. And they came with some values that we could look at, and it seemed to be pretty consistent for the different modalities we were looking at. Some people said also that JPEG was not as good as JPEG 2000, so we may want to move to the new standards. So that's where these are the areas which have been tested and some result that we could extract from literature review. I won't stop on that. What did the lawyers said? Lawyers said, well, you want to do lossy compression? Fine, do it. Not a problem. You can do it. It won't be much different from what you do in your daily life. You're not exposed to more risk than just doing a flu shot or something like that. That's fine. So the only thing they said, and that's where it came with a little bit as a shock for the users, is that we should do our readings on the compressed images, which means that if we want to use lossy compression, we cannot store the non-compressed image, read it, and then send to the deep archive the compressed image. We have to do our readings on the compressed image. And that makes a big difference, because they said, okay, you think it's good? Perfect. So use it. But to prove us that you believe that it's really good, you have to make sure that you read your compressed images first. And we said, okay, that's fine, we can do it. So now we spoke to the Canadian Association of Radiologists, who with Infoway would like to see that generated. And the Canadian Association of Radiologists, and you know radiologists are very careful people, said that yes, we agree in principle. So what does it mean in principle? It means that it should be fine, but we need to get more proof that it works. And that's how we got into this huge stuff of evaluating the compression. And we hope that we'll be able to come with standards pretty soon. What type of compression? As I said, DICOM and everybody's using JPEG and JPEG 2000. You know, JPEG 2000 is a new standard for wavelet. So it's just a wavelet base. We suffered in our study because we decided to test both. And really, it was tough because we said, okay, when we studied, we said, why do we bother with JPEG? JPEG 2000 is much better. No way. We know that, so we don't even have to worry about that. But some people said, oh, you know what? Some studies have shown that JPEG gets better results. We said, no, that's not true. But we pushed so much that we said, okay, let's look at it. The problem with JPEG is it's much less flexible. JPEG 2000 is difficult to use in the medical world when it's limited to 8 and 12-bit images. JPEG 2000 is much more flexible. You did with whatever you want. So, as I said, even though we been very brave, we studied our study, we said we'll test everything and everybody will be happy. And at the end of the day, I don't know if anyone has been happy, and I'm in trouble, I can tell you. So I guess that you may not be able to see much here, but this is an example of the artifact that you find with square block artifacts with JPEG, blurring effects with JPEG 2000, just a reminder. So what did we do? We look at all the literature, the review which has been done. We decided to try to standardize the process and to apply this study to all body parts and modalities that we could envision, or at least most of them. And that was kind of new because usually on all the studies you were looking at ultrasound for something, CT for something else, and there was nothing really standardized. So we said, okay, great, do the standard. Why did we do that? We didn't want to show that compression could go up to 80 to 1, 800 to 1. I regularly get phone calls from people who tell me, oh, your thing is a joke. I can show you compression with, I can compress your images 1,000 to 1, and it will still be good. You won't see the difference. I say, okay, fine. And still have some guys who are coming to me now in a few weeks to show me something like that. But we said, okay, if we can show that a 10 to 1 or something around that, we are fine. That will be great already, and we'll make big savings. So also, we didn't test the reader skills, and that was the major concern of all the radiologists who were enrolled. They said, oh, okay, you want us to look at images, and if we miss something, we lose our license. I said, no, you won't lose your license. You just want to see if it works. That's all. We went to test 5 modalities, and you know, CRDR is just a standard digitized X-rays or with place or with an image intensifier, CT, ultrasound, MR, nuclear medicine. Nuclear medicine has not been done too much, and it's also something pretty complex with a lot of different formats and different body parts here. We, as I said, went for JPEG 2000, 3 different ratios based on the previous studies. And we decided to use 2 different methodologies, diagnostic accuracy and subjective assessment with image comparison with origin revealed for choice. And so by joining the 2, we thought that we would be kind of bulletproof for people who would say, well, you know, you're just looking at the aesthetics and who cares. We've been something that I'm pretty proud of that. We needed to have 3 readers per session, which means that 23 sessions, and mean that we needed at least 69 radiologists, and we've been able to enroll 100 radiologists throughout the country. And just to let you know, you have about 2,000 radiologists for the whole country, which is not much. And not only that, 100 radiologists free. hope you hear that. And I thank them very much because they've been very dedicated. They gave us a lot of time. I told them, well, don't worry, it will take you 2 hours and you're done. It took them more than that. And those radiologists have been outstanding. I don't know if they will agree to keep going if you do more studies, but I've been very grateful. We send them the images on a CD. They had to read them on their own workstation, the one they use for their day-to-day reading. We didn't create any special environment. Gave them a mix of normal and pathology, usually 4 abnormal images for 1 normal, for statistical reasons, just to see if we were consistent, if the rate of error was the same with the normal and abnormal. 3 different ratio of compression, as I said. Images were completely randomized, so they couldn't recognize those images. And they had to answer the questions, so they had the viewer was linked to the internet, the workstation was linked to the internet, and believe it or not, that was one of the major issues we had, is how to get IT administrator to allow us to hook a workstation to the internet. That was tough. And here is how it looked like. So they had to look at this image, say they saw pathology in which quadrant of the image, open the drop menu, pick the pathology, and give a level of confidence here from 1 to 5. And here I think there was a tiny little ground glass opacity here, so they had to say if they could recognize it. So we did that. We had about 2,500 images for the whole session. And then the second step was to show them the original, always on the same side, and they had to compare the 2 images and give a difference assessment on a scale from 1 to 6. Why 1 to 6? Because they had to commit at some points, so they couldn't just be neutral. And by the way, this is JPEG 2000 at 15 to 1, original, no difference. And that was the scale they had to use from an acceptable to no difference. Few examples how it looked like. So just to show, because we've been asked, well, what did you show? That so very subtle images that you may not be able to see with the light here. It's a little too bright. But this one, there was a small pneumothorax, pretty difficult to see, and we had to blow the image to show that there was a line here that you would see here. So difficult to assess, and we did that for many different. Same thing at chest again. CT of the chest, same thing, the little tiny lesion that I showed you before. And stones and kidney. So a whole variety here. There was a small fracture that you should be able to see here even with the light. But some were much more subtle than that. And this increased. Something which always been very controversial is breast, and when we spoke with breast experts, they said no problem, you can compress as much as you won't see a difference. Nuclear medicine, as I said, this is just one example, but there are many different modalities in nuclear medicine, and if you're interested in that, that's a full field. So we were pretty happy with that. And then we started to process our results. I'll move through that. And we had wonderful results, no difference for almost everything except 3 areas here. So we said, oh, that's surprising. So we used sensitivity, specificity to assess our differences. And we saw that, for instance, on the diagnostic accuracy side, for some bone images, people were not as, didn't perform as well with JPEG 2000 than they did with JPEG. We said, oh, that's bizarre. And then we looked at CT, and CT came with some results even more surprising, where for body, mainly for the liver, and for brain, we had pretty poor results with JPEG 2000 compared with JPEG. And to tell you the truth, I was very disappointed, because I said, okay, this study will show us that we can completely get rid of the old JPEG. We don't want to see it anymore. So it's out, and we'll replace it by JPEG 2000, and here we go. And I again, I don't know if you can see here, but if you could see, you would see that on this area, for instance, compared to this one, you have a lot of blurring artifacts here. And the really, really, really obvious degradation. And I'm not reading brains, but even me, I could see it. So that must have been something really big. And we tried to understand why. So we spent a lot of time last summer to try to compare JPEG and JPEG 2000. What difference? So we looked at the way where JPEG was addressing the whole thing, and JPEG, there is no spatial resolution. And JPEG 2000 or any wavelet, you have a very good spatial resolution. You have a real spatial resolution. So we isolated small segment of the image, and we looked at the PSNR. And we saw that we had pretty good values here in JPEG. And in JPEG 2000, a very low PSNR. So then at the end of the day, what did we find? We found that due to the fact there is no spatial resolution in JPEG, all the energy is added and contribute to the image. But JPEG 2000 or any wavelet has good spatial resolution. So we'll deal with each and every little speckle. And what it does at the end of the day, it's just discarding all the low energy, high frequency coefficients. And so we lose all this information. And that was something that had already been written in the literature about 8 or 10 years ago by Brad Erickson in Rochester. So, but it has not been documented by any kind of work. So that was a shock. Anyway, this didn't really impact the result because it happened at pretty high level of compression. At the lowest level of compression, there was no difference, no visible difference, but we had to know that. So that means that it's not as simple as it looks like. And as I said, when I went into this study, everybody told me, don't do that. First, it's useless. You don't need it, but I don't think it's true. Two, you will find so many problems and issues that it will, you'll be more in trouble than anything else. And it's true that this type of thing was kind of interesting. The only thing that we found at the end of this study is that it needs much more work. We need to go into much more modality structures and test more and more and more and more evaluation. And we didn't even approach the 3D and the complex reconstruction and how we could apply compression to all those wonderful things that I showed you at the beginning. No, I didn't show you because it didn't work, but I tried to show you at the beginning. And how we can, for instance, apply AD detection system to already compressed images. So I hope that this is just opening the way to much more studies. And these were the results that we showed, but it's not even yet published, and people has already started to argument on that, which is good. So what to do to, and I didn't talk about streaming and all the other things, that would be too much. But what to do with all this stuff? In 2003, SCAR, the Society for Computer Application Radiology, which just changed its name and became the Society for Imaging Informatics in Medicine, has launched a new initiative called TRIP. TRIP stands for Transforming the Radiology Interpretation Process. And the goal of TRIP is to try to address all those issues. So how can we do better in terms of interpreting our images, and for the large data set, how can we be more effective to distribute our images, and how can we decrease the medical errors? So it's a brand new field within this medical imaging thing, which deals with a number of different specialties in the field. So we have to talk about human perception. How do we understand the behavior of the radiologists? How can we deal with the way they sit on the workstation? What can we do to improve that? Image processing, computer-aided detection. This is something which will grow in the coming years, and I'm pretty sure that in 10 years from now, we'll use that more and more when it gets some maturity. It's still pretty young at the moment, but it will change the way we work. Visualization, can we still sit on a workstation with a mouse? Does it make sense? Not sure. navigation usability, how do we improve our user interface? Are we happy with the way it works at the moment? And how can we integrate more our tools and database, for instance? How can we match all those different databases that we use? Just to give you an idea, Storybook, we had different, I think, something like 170 different software running on the network, and which didn't talk together. So that's even better. And we need to do more on evaluation, validation, make sure that we have processes in place to optimize the use of our new technology. So there's a lot of work to do. And that's why I'm pretty happy to be at McMaster, because I hope that we'll be able to build a structure in medical imaging informatics where we'll be able to work with you and really pair the clinical sciences, radiology with researchers and computer scientists to try to solve those issues and make it happen. That's very brief, and maybe I'm sorry if I spent so much time on this compression thing, but it's a very hot topic, and hopefully we'll come with those standards for Canada in the next 2 months, where we'll tell people, yes, you can use lossy compression. And if it's so important, it's not only for Canada, but everybody's looking at us. And in Europe, UK is coming with the same thing. They've been watching our study. Germany, France. In the United States, they're starting the same type of study last year, and they want also to be able to use that, because that has a huge impact on the way we store and distribute it. So that's why I spend so much time. But all those other issues are as important and need to be addressed, and we cannot do it without you. So that's really something which needs a collaboration, strong collaboration, and I think there's a lot of work to do. So thank you very much for your patience. I hope it wasn't too long. And I'm more than happy to answer questions if you can understand them. Thank you.
There's now a chance for people to ask questions, and because hi, Simon, pass the microphone to you. I just want to get it clarified. You did some original studies in compression, then you indicated the Canadian Association of Radiologists wanted more. Were the final results in compression ratios what you provided them, or are you still doing more work?
No, these are the final results of this study, and that's the one on which they will base the standards.
Could you just go back to that slide quickly, if you can find it?
Sure.
What I'm curious about is the enormous variation in compression ratios and what the correlates are in the image. Why, there it is. You go from 24,
right.
25, down to 10, 8. Can you give us an idea of why the variation exists there?
Yeah, because we are talking here for CRDR, we're talking about very big images. So in the range of at least up to 9 megabytes, something like that. So compared to small images in ultrasound, which are in the range of 480K, or CT, which are 5.5 in the 500K. So you have much more room to compress your images. And for chest, for instance, where we gave here values in the range of 20 to 30, and also these are expressed in ratio, or compression ratio, but there was some issue. We should be in bit per pixel, but because it was easier to understand for people, we went with ratios. But even chest, we could go much higher. And the reason why we have this big difference is the image is so big, and there's so much black in those images, they can discard a lot of information without really changing the data. But that's what we found with our study also on the comparison between JPEG 2000. You have really information pertaining to the type of image and not only the size.
But you're saying the size has dominated this.
Yes. This is size.
Within the realm of images where size was not the dominant factor, let's say a comparison between an MRI and CT.
That's right.
Can you get, what are the differences anatomically or in terms of sites that made the difference in the compression ratio? So
if you look at those images here, just for the image itself, it's the same size. We're talking about 524K images for CT and for MR, but we can go higher because we're not dealing with the same type of information. Here we're dealing with voxels, here we're dealing with pixels, and we found that also the spectral, the frequency of the image is so different that we could go much higher in MR than with CT. And that's where as I said, we found that there are much more information than just the size. At the beginning, people said, oh, okay, you just look at the size of the image. The first standards were really dealing big image, large image, small image, and there was a very simple dichotomy. You were supposed to be able to compress a large image to 25:1, a small image 10:1. But what we found is not true. It's not large and small image. It's different values, different properties of the image, which will really impact the quality of the compression and the level we can reach. So that's why I said more work to do.
Questions? Make sure you have a chance.
Yeah, I had a question regarding the, at one point you had a slide contrasting JPEG and JPEG 2000, and you said something about the number of bits, 8 to 12 bits I think it was for the JPEG was okay. What sort of, how many gray levels, those are all black and white images or gray level images that you use.
Yeah.
So how many levels are there in those?
I think we were at 256 level of gray, but the big problem is that the standard, the JPEG, glossy JPEG, doesn't go beyond 12-bit, and most of our images now are 16-bit. So that was one of the major issues that we faced when we had to convert or to apply lossy JPEG to 16-bit images, or 14, 15, 16 bits. What happens in those images at the beginning, you have a 12-bit image with 4-bit allocated to the DICOM tag. So what you can do, if you want to convert your image, you can take your 16-bit image, remove the DICOM tag, keep only the 12-bit of true image, and then apply your compression. But if you do that, you lose all the DICOM properties, so you're not able to window level anymore, so you cannot play on that. So which means that if you really want to try to read your image in real world, you cannot do it unless you do something much more complex. So there are different ways to convert 16-bit images to 12 or 8-bit, and the best one may be to rescale your images. So you look at your densities, you go from 0 to 4095, and you rescale your images in your Hansfield scale, your level of gray. But that's so complicated and so tedious that definitely I don't think it's a good way. I know that some companies are still using JPEG and finding ways to do this conversion, but the conclusion of our study is that we shouldn't use lossy JPEG. If we want to be on the safe side, and if we don't want to play with the deep the bit depth and take a risk to alter the reading or the quality of the image, we shouldn't use lossy JPEG higher than 12-bit, unless the JPEG committee agrees to reconsider and maybe change something to the JPEG. They won't do it. We tried. We asked.
On another note, besides the compression, you have somewhere that you said 40 million exams in Canada per year. Is that 40 million studies? 40. We had 41 million 2 years ago. So we should we should be something like 43, 45 now. Wow. So who's getting them all?
43 million studies. Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of a lot.
That's interesting. It's more than one per person per year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of amazing. Each of those, of course, is generating lots and lots of images, as you pointed out. Again, if you have a question, please signal. Okay, I'll get to you here.
Have you looked into correlating the image quality or the reading results or your compression ratios to just noticeable difference values in the actual window level that's used by the radiologist? I remember one study was suggesting that that's the most accurate way of looking at whether something's acceptable or not, is you actually have to window level the image and then compare the just noticeable difference of that versus the original. And that will take into account any transforms, for instance, from optical density data for a chest CR, for instance. It has to be transformed into something that's visible on your computer monitor, something that gets you into p-value space, which is a just noticeable difference space. I know with the work we've done at AGFA, depending on your window level, you can get totally different results for what's an acceptable compression level. For instance, for something like chest CTs, something like 12:1 looks great. You change that to brain, and 12:1 looks like mush, especially with the wavelet algorithms. So it's got to do with the actual window level that's used. Brain window level might only be a width of 50 on a 4,000 scale, so while a chest would maybe a width of 2,000, so it's a very big difference.
So I have a question for you. That means that in your study the window level was fixed, and you displayed you didn't allow people to move the window level? Or displaying
I'm talking about another study that I heard about, but just in my own tests of image quality on using wavelet algorithms, I would use the standard window level presets that doctors have told us they use for those particular types of exams.
They definitely had the presets. So yeah, they were using window level, but they were allowed to move the window level if they wanted to. Because what we try to do is really to reproduce real life. Now, I won't say take an industry comparison that were in production, but we really wanted to show that they could use lossy compression, and that would make a difference. So we decided to allow them to zoom with no limit to window level the way they wanted, the way they would really do with their images in real life. And that's why we use their own workstation. They want to create a lab environment, but let them use them, assuming that they had the appropriate workstation. And we check with their PACS administrator the appropriate light environment, the appropriate. But we didn't create some kind of lab experience, so they had to be able to do this. And I read exactly the contrary about the window level preset and things where people said no, you cannot do that. So, so some people.
Once you let the people, just checking with a fixed window level, the image can be slightly brightened or darkened by the quantization that goes along in the wavelet algorithm. So it's actually true that maybe that's not the best way, but it may be better than percent signal noise ratio, which again is a pretty arbitrary unit.
Yeah. What we found that if we want to drive a compression, and that's something I would definitely like to do, is instead of looking at the PSNR, we'd rather look at the frequency content and drive the level of compression from the frequency content of the image. So that's something which I guess would be more interesting.
Just another question, direction. I mean, compression helps in the sense that you can move images around more quickly and save on storage. But right back at the beginning is the sheer number of slices and images that are created. Is volume rendering and the segmentation stuff that's done to pull out things, is that adequate to deal with the increase in images, or is there something beyond that that's required?
That's something which brings us to you mean in terms of how to deal with all those volume renderings? And
to compute them is one problem, just getting them, and then to look at them, which you still have the problem of finding the information. Is it sufficient, or is there a step beyond that where you need, for example, a degree of automated recognition which draws your attention to at least certain things?
There's a lot, and that's what TRIP is doing. The TRIP initiative is really looking at this type of thing. And we think that we have a lot to learn from the video gaming industry. And at some point, I think that radiology may end up being the same thing that when you're on your Wii or whatever, and your PlayStation, and how are you fast enough to pick little details? That how do you see them? How do you pick them? And that's a big problem that we should maybe create our workstation the same way than the video games. Use the same type of tools, and I think we're getting there, because when you see the volume of data, it's almost the same type of problem. If I'm going my fly through to see a polyp in the colon, how can I be sure that I get it? So I have to pick it at some point. I have to flash it. And
we talked earlier today too about some of the research areas, for example, image fusion. And is there a potential in bringing different image modalities together, for example, in reducing the volume or comparison of previous to current, or that type of work? I'm trying to think too back to electrocardiography and an earlier problem, not dissimilar. And I mean, the other problem that you might address is we're facing right now in the news that 19% of the images read by a radiologist in pre-EI are in error. And, what can be done not only to enhance the volume problem or fix the volume problem, but also increase the consistency and accuracy problem?
That's a lot of work to do. Again, it comes back to optimization of the equipment. Try to pick what's best with whatever modality, and as you say, try to merge the two modalities and try to get the best information. There's not much done on that. So there are a few initiatives. We know about registration. There are a few interesting initiatives for prostate, for breast, for a number of things like that. But there is still much more work to do, and I'm pretty sure that if we do that, if we do some fusion on the images, we'll get much better results. But also, if we follow the appropriateness criterion, we know that this thing is good for this, and we maybe by merging the two best, we can also optimize the use of radiation and decrease the amount of radiation that we're delivering. And a lot of work to do on this stuff. A lot of work.
There's a couple of parts to my question, David. I'll see if I can remember them. Just to sort of encapsulate then what you would like to see from this study. Number one is you'd like to push up the compression rates, right, across the board, right? Number two is, would you like to, is in your dreams, is it to have a one-size-fits-all, a compression method that would cover all of these methods? That's the second part of my question. The third, if I can remember, is what would be the way to go? Would the way to go for people in research to look at, go back and investigate compression algorithms from the beginning? Either you take wavelength, or would it be something like open up the JPEG 2000 box and tweak it, according to, like what you're suggesting there is something almost that has the aroma of image quality metric, where you want to not only look at PSNR, but you want to manipulate sort of the high frequency part of the. So, did you get all the three parts?
Issue. Okay, the lossy and lossless. So I don't talk about lossless here. I was only talking about lossy compression, and I still think that yes, we can use lossy compression. I think this is doable, and we can use it in clinical activity without jeopardizing anything for the patient. I don't think there is a real risk to lose critical information. If we lose a few pixels I don't think it will make a big difference. And statistically, it definitely won't be significant. So it's a very low level. And I know a lot of people, David Shannon in Chicago told me, well, why are you bothering with this stupid compression thing? It's completely useless. I'm not sure. I still don't think so. And so my opinion, yes, we should be able to use it. Second question, one size fits all, definitely not. No, I don't think this is possible. There's no way, and it's exactly the reverse. Is try to find the appropriate range of compression for each modality, and we may we didn't go into the thin slices at all for CT in this study. We only looked at 5 and 10 millimeter slices. But if we go in the 2.5, 125, there's 0.625 millimeter slices. There were some studies which said that lossy compression shouldn't be used at higher level than 5:1. Otherwise, we are losing too much information. And as I said, I still use the ratio instead of bit per pixel, but that's easier. And so the third question, I don't think that PSNR has proven like matching with the clinical results, so it's not something we can really rely on. But I would really like to see more research to assess more modalities, and that's why I would like to create this bank of images where we could make those images available for more research, but go into much more modalities and different vendors too, and different algorithms. I didn't mention here, but I just took product from a vendor which is widely distributed, but I looked only at one type of compression, the one from Pegasus. I didn't look at many. There are many other compression available, and depending, and JPEG 2000, as you say, is even more complex. Then you can change your integer value. You can do a lot of tweaking within the JPEG 2000. So do I know if the one I used is really appropriate, and did I do the best setting, the best? I'm not sure. I don't know. I trusted the vendor, and we checked the images. We did some quality control on those images, and I have a pretty thick evaluation that I didn't show, but we spent a lot of time doing a quality control on that. So we assumed that it was appropriate, but there are many other, even within the JPEG 2000, many other algorithms we could look at, and there are new initiatives. There's a new Microsoft HD compression tool that I would love to be able to test. So there's much more that I think we can do. And ultimately, I think that the way it will go is to find some tool which would allow us to drive the compression. Maybe it's not the image frequency. Maybe it's an association of different parameters that we can use. But it has to go in something which will be much more complex, but an engine which will allow us to, according to each image, because even in the same study, you may have images that you can compress at 20:1, and other images which won't support more than 7 or 10:1 in the same study. So we need maybe to apply some tool to each image to make sure that we get the appropriate level of compression. And that's what I was thinking when coming here, when I said, well, if anyone is interested in doing some work on compression, that this is really an open world and something which would be necessary if we want to use it. We cannot just stop here.
There's still life left in the compression area.
That's why I said I'm in trouble.
The more you learn, the more you learn you don't know. David, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Well, that was quite a presentation. Thank you, David. And I just want to thank everyone for coming. And our next seminar, as I said, is May 27th on Wednesday on Geographic Information Systems for Public Health. I look forward to seeing you all come back. And David, as a token of our appreciation, here's a small gift. So anyway, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next month.